on AM 1220 KHTS. Hey, welcome to the show, The Total Financial Hour. I'm Arif Halaby, your host, coming to you every week at this time. We're talking about your family's finances, of course, getting out of debt, managing money, but every once in a while, we get in and have a conversation with some guests on the air. We've talked to numerous authors over the years, and one of my favorite things to do is to explore the idea of how and why I think this new economy that's starting, right? It started about a year ago. We'll see how it continues. You can always judge this stuff historically. You look back, you get an idea and say, oh, this was the best time. This was the Great Recession. This was the worst time. You get a chance to see that. But what is the impact? What is the thing that runs through everything that we do? And in my opinion, it's your values and your morals. And where do you derive those from? I always love it when people say, oh, well, I have rights. Where do those rights come from? Well, the United States government didn't give us the rights. The Constitution, the Declaration of Independence actually clearly states that those rights are divine. That means they come from God. They're inalienable. It's very important. They're not derived by some government body that can change your mind next week. Well, joining us today, we have a special guest, Barak Lurie. If you've listened to his show on AM 870, Barak Lurie is a frequent host, many years. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being here.
You're welcome. You've been on the air. You're like a veteran now, old-time guy.
About 8 years on my own radio show on Sundays on KRLA, but also doing these commercials and being associated with KRLA.
Yes, quite a long time.
Yeah.
Well, Barak has an amazing book out, folks. For those of you that are joining us on Facebook, we get quite a few hundred of you that take a look, but I'm going to show you the cover here. Atheism Kills: The Dangers of a World Without God and Cause for Hope. Okay, so Barak, tell us a little bit. Your forward is by Dennis Prager. That's pretty admirable.
Right.
Dennis is kind of well known. A few people might know.
Yeah, a couple.
Yeah, just might know who he is.
It's so funny. I tell people about the forward, and I read the forward when he provided it to us because, that's why I'd like to check it out. And it was such a good forward. It was so well written. And I realized, oh man, this is so much better written than anything else in the book. So
you better make sure the book is up to par.
Guys, just read the forward. You're good at, you don't have to read anything further after that.
Well, we have seen time and again, especially since the jihadists basically have declared war on us, from the first World Trade Center bombing, folks, you forget how quickly. Yeah. It wasn't just 9/11 that changed the United States, or at least it shouldn't have been. We had in the 90s under the Clinton administration, when they tried to blow up the World Trade Center the first time, and you had the blind sheikh. That
93, I think, 1993.
Yeah. And when that took place, guys, it set a precedent. There was a tone that was set. How was the United States going to attack this? Were we going to attack this based on the ideology, or were we going to attack this as if they were criminals? So they were fighting a war. We're doing a police action. So Osama bin Laden came along and said, we're going to do this. Now, a lot of you say, well, it's God is the reason. Religion has caused so much death and destruction. Barak, your book says something different.
Yeah, it's the notion that atheism kills. When people say, and we've gotten a lot of pushback on this, we have people saying, oh gosh, religion has caused far more than godlessness. I'm just an atheist. What's the big deal? I don't subscribe to your ideology. And you're just so very wrong. Very wrong. Religion has killed too, To which I say, first of all, even assuming that religion has had its share of problems in the past, I say, look, the title is called Atheism Kills. It's not called Only Atheism Kills.
Yes.
Right? So of course there are other things. For them to argue that religion has killed, therefore atheism hasn't killed, is so absurd, not only from a historical point of view, but it's like arguing, well, gosh, Charles Manson killed people, so therefore Ted Bundy didn't kill people, right?
Yeah, it wouldn't make sense.
It's an absurdity. Or communism killed people, therefore fascism did not kill people. Godlessness is the number one killer throughout history. And before the French Revolution, and even after it to some extent, it was in its infancy stage. Think of it like Hitler as a baby, right? It could only do so much damage because it wasn't yet in full control of any particular government. But boy, once it matured, as it were, and got a hold of a government, starting with the French Revolution, watch out. Horrific things happen.
Well, you see the powers of communism that walked down the road, and it took them quite a few years, 50 years to kill the same amount of people, if you will, that probably died based on the history of mankind. In other words, so many people have died. But look at how many people were killed with fascism in such a short period of time.
Yeah, it's really extraordinary. Both communism and fascism, both of which are godless ideologies. Make no mistake, Mussolini was a very proud atheist. Hitler himself was truly an atheist, whether people realize it or not.
Well, look, prior to World War II, if you're a history person, Franklin Delano Roosevelt actually admired.
Yeah, that's right.
Mussolini. He said, he's a pretty good guy. He's an admirable guy.
I also admired the Germans for their approach to how to deal with the eugenics matters. It was a mutual admiration society at the end of the day. Really bizarre. And so everyone was focusing on this thing called progressivism. And progressivism loved the communists. They loved the fascists. It was a very bizarre mutual admiration society, but both of them were godless. And in the 20s and even in the teens of the last century, there was a sense that, well, we've got to get rid of the old ways. This whole God-based system, well, it's just not working out. Look at Mussolini. He's so efficient, don't you know? And here we are with our crazy system of checks and balances, and Congress can't agree with the Senate, and the president has to approve everything. We need to get things done. And anyway, they admired both the communists and the fascists.
Because of the dictatorship role and the lack of accountability to any set standard.
Right.
See, that's the challenge, guys. Even today, they're debating in the founding fathers, how many of them weren't actually Christ believers? They were still, some of them were deists. That means they believed that God created the earth, set it spinning, and then walked away. Okay, they still believed that there was a God. And I would challenge some of your beliefs when you say that George Washington wasn't a Christian or a man who believed in God. You try to revise history. You hear it all the time. It's just
all the founding fathers, every single one of them, including Thomas Jefferson, whom atheists likes to believe was an atheist. He was nothing like that. He was a true believer in every sense. He may not go to church as often as the others did, but he believed in God. I mean, that was basic. Look, I believe in God very deeply. In fact, I know that there's a creator. I don't find myself going to synagogue as often as I'd like, but that doesn't change the fact that I'm a devout believer.
Barack, you may know this or not, but I spent almost 11 years as a Los Angeles policeman, and I was there during the riots, and it was incredible to me because I believe in right and wrong, and to me there's this balance here that there's right and there's wrong, and there's shades of gray, of course, but one of the things that I noticed is that during the riots, when you saw human beings do things, it's because they weren't afraid of the police anymore. So when you lose God in the schools, when you lose God in the fear of God and the punishments and the morality, then you only have to be afraid of law enforcement and going to jail. If you take both of those away from society, which today we're diminishing police officers every day, we're diminishing God every day, it's no wonder that you see some of the problems today.
It's a bizarre kind of world that so many on the left, and mostly on the left, want to approach. On the one hand, they don't want all the police, right? Because it's some sort of a dictatorship, a command and control government. And on the other hand, they don't want to believe in God either. So, but if you don't believe in God, if you don't have a world that understands that God really is in charge, well, then men are in charge, people are in charge, and you end up with the world get away with whatever you can, beat up whoever can, steal whatever you can. Molest anyone that you can, so long as you can get away with it. And if the only thing that keeps you from doing those bad things are the police that are enforcing out there, well, what happens when the police are gone? And the police that you despise so much, right?
And now you get that same group of people are now in charge of a government. And we see it with Mao, we see it with Pol Pot, we see it with Stalin, we see it with now Kim Jong-il in North Korea, where they think he's the God. There is no belief in a higher power.
Yeah. Every single one of those bad boys, as I like to call them, they all thought that they were gods. One way or the other, they advanced themselves as gods. It's interesting. I mean, have you been to Vietnam and seen? Okay, in Vietnam, in Hanoi, there's the Ho Chi Minh Mausoleum. So you go in there, And they have this Ho Chi Minh. He's right there. They've embalmed him, right?
Yeah.
So, and you're allowed to go around and watch his,
Look at him, yeah.
You get to look at him. And they revere him as a god. And you're supposed to not joke. You're not supposed to be reverent. You're supposed to bow as you pass by. You're not supposed to smile or anything else. You would never do that with any of our presidents. We've never embalmed George Washington or Lincoln or otherwise.
Sure.
Right? This is not what we do. But it's in these dictatorships, the godless ones, where, ironically, they deify their leaders. Isn't that interesting?
I saw that
every single one.
In Tiananmen Square, where it's Mao's tomb. And they have a line, and I've been there 3 different times. And every time I've been there, the line is around the corner. And it's people from all walks of life, all across China. And they have the same thing. So it's got to be that same mindset where they feel that these folks are gods, I guess.
Well, if you don't believe in God, then you will make your gods regardless. That is going to happen. We have, and I describe this in my book, we have the God impulse. We must have God. And if you don't pursue it in the actual God that we know and love from the Bible, well, then you'll pursue it some other way, usually by putting it upon somebody else. We even did it to some extent with Obama. Remember how people looked at him with such glorified eyes. Their eyes were glazing with such great hope, and they
remember
were so fearful.
those pictures that were like the red and blue pictures where they had him on the.
Oh yes, the two-toned.
Like a two-tone, like a reddish.
Yeah,
tone.
almost like it was. Well, it was very evocative of Che Guevara.
That's right. That's exactly where I was going with this.
It's so disgusting.
Yeah.
But it was change and hope, and they didn't want you to ask too many questions. And look, this is more than any ordinary man, is what they wanted you to believe. And he wanted to transform America. And he said, this is the time that we will stop the seas from rising. And they truly deified this man. I think I've never seen anything like it.
It was scary. It was scary
lives.
to those of us that have a faith in God that look back and say, man is only as good as he defers to God for decisions and consultation and prayer.
Yeah.
It's a truly a change in the system when you see a society that generally has faith in God. Yeah. Look, when we talk about inalienable rights, folks, look up what the definition is. It means they come from God. It doesn't mean that these are rights that come from man's decision or Congress or president or parliament. We're, I think, the only country in the world that actually puts that into our Constitution. Because once you do that, you remove that portion of the power away from the elected officials. And that's a dangerous thing because elected officials want to maintain power. I don't care what party they're in.
It's fascinating what you say. I remember even as a child when I was 12 years old or so, I thought, boy, there's no way you can truly regulate every single possible crime, right? You can't avoid everything. So we have this notion of the natural law, right? Don't steal, don't cheat, don't commit adultery, don't murder, and so on. But if you try to make a law for absolutely every conceivable thing, well, what signal do you send? You send the signal that, well, so long as you're not violating this or that regulation, you're good to go.
Yes.
Right? Well, it just only means that nobody has perceived it before. And my best example of that is a man named Bernie Madoff, who, as you know, he followed every regulation.
That's right.
And yet he pulled off the greatest scam
That's right.
in U.S. financial history.
That's right.
And that's the world it is. And somebody who is a true believer in God would not do that. He just could not have been a true believer in God.
Because I think behind the scenes you always have this answer to something or somebody higher power than you. I'm not saying we don't make mistakes as people, as certainly as God-fearing people. I think behind the scenes, whether you're in the financial business or whether you're a pastor or whether you're a car mechanic, it doesn't matter. If you believe somebody is that you are accountable to somebody else, God specifically,
right.
Someday you will answer for the decisions that you make.
Yeah.
And you know they're wrong. I'm not talking about an honest mistake. Well, I thought it was X and it was Y. Look, this is very important, folks, because you got to follow this. And let me back up because you need to get this book. It's called Atheism Kills by Barak Lurie. Look, this is important. When it's 2 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday morning, why do people stop at the stop sign? Why do people stop at the stoplight? There's nobody around. Nobody on the left, nobody on the right. You don't see a police car who's looking at you. but you stop at the stoplight and you wait for it to turn green.
Right.
Why do people do that? Travel around the world. I've been to many countries. I've been blessed to go to various parts of the world. And even when the police are present, they don't follow the rules. It's a suggestion. The police can't stop you. They don't care. They're not afraid of the police. But why in the United States do we still have a fear to stay on the right side of the line when we're driving, within reason on the speed limit? I'm not talking about the crazy folks that are going 100 miles an hour in the 45 zone. We stay within reason. We're told to wear our seatbelt, and look, you can almost never find somebody without a seatbelt these days.
Right.
Why do we do those things?
It's a great question, and I think the answer is very palpably because we believe in God. We are still a God-centered country. To your point, Arif, you have in Europe, and I lived in Europe for a long time, in Germany in particular, when an ambulance or a police come by,
that's right,
they do not pull to
the
side.
No, they don't. They're
That's
supposed
your problem,
to.
Baby.
Yeah, they're supposed. Yeah, have you seen that?
Right, and here it doesn't matter what time of day, whether the police are watching or otherwise. We all pull to the side. We feel like that's the right thing to do, even if no cop is watching.
And I think the more you have God-centered societies, the greater opportunity you have for charitable giving, the greater opportunity you have for getting along, for compromise.
Right.
Because whenever you see the government involved, the greater the amount. Look at statistics. Those that are registered Democrats, registered Republicans, liberal, progressive left, and conservative right. Just look at the numbers. It's not something that I can tell you. And you get a chance to see what? Number one, you get a chance to see who gives the most money to charity.
Yes.
That's important because the left will tell you they gave at the office. They'll say, hey, I'm a progressive. I think the government should tax those people, those rich people, and the government should take care of the poor people. On the other side, you see people that are God-centered, generally a lot more charitable, a lot more giving.
Right. Well, let me just tell you what the atheists will say, because I assume that we have some atheist listeners, and I know that they're chomping at the bit right now.
Yeah.
And I know what they're going to say because, wait for it, I was an atheist myself for 11 solid years. I will out-atheist any atheist out there. Okay? I know this stuff inside and out. So they'll say that, come on, guys, the reason why there's more charity out there is because you guys are afraid of your sky god and you want to have an afterlife, and this is...
You're buying your way.
Yeah, you're just buying your way.
Yeah.
You're a selfish fool. You ain't fooling anybody. So that's one argument that they will make. The other argument they will make is, what are you talking about? Of course we're very moral people. We're very good people. I'm an atheist, and I'm a good guy. I don't want to murder anybody. You see? QED, as they say in philosophy. To which I say, that's nice that you're a good person, but it has nothing to do with logic, and it has nothing to do with morality. You are good in spite of your atheism, not because of your atheism. Okay. So, and it's too easy. Even when I was an atheist, I never claimed to have morals. I just thought, okay, you know what? I'm going to get away with whatever I can. It's a very dark ideology.
I'm sure.
And intellectually, you must understand it's dark. And then because it begs the question, whose morality are you implying?
That's exactly right.
And the logic thing,
I want to get to that when we come back. We're going to come back in just a second, folks. But I want to give you a chance to give us a call. If you have a question, you want to talk to Barack Lurie, it's 298-KHTS. That's 298-5487. Give us a call if you have a question. Barack Lurie, Atheism Kills, the Dangers of a World Without God and the Cause for Hope. Special guest on today's Total Financial Hour. I'm Arif Halaby. This is your hometown station, and we'll be right back.
Mission Valley Bank puts the community in community banking. They strive to be your most trusted bank. Mission Valley Bank is happy to sponsor KHTS Holiday Music. Happy holidays!
KHTS Holiday Music also brought to you by Chiquita Canyon.
From all of us at Chiquita Canyon, we'd like to wish you and your family a happy, prosperous holiday season. This year, Chiquita Canyon is proud to sponsor holiday music on your local hometown station, KHTS. Happy holidays.
What to do, what to do. Your child's birthday is almost here. Put your birthday plans on ice. Ice Station Valencia. Throw a hassle-free party for 10 or more with an Ice Station party package. Public skating, rental skates, group lesson, birthday cake, pizza, soft drinks, party favors, and a decorated party area. Your party hostess will have a gift for your birthday child. For your fun ice skating party, call 775-8686 and keep your party cool. Ice Station Valencia, across the street from Valencia High.
Finding the right lawyer can be a challenge, but in Santa Clarita, there's no need to search when there's Hacker Law Group, Santa Clarita's premier litigation firm. Jeffrey Hacker has represented celebrities, financial institutions, accident victims, real estate developers, realtors, contractors, businesses, nonprofit organizations, and other individuals and companies with their legal challenges. Mr. Hacker is one of Santa Clarita's leaders, consistently listed as one of our most influential. When everything is on the line and you need legal counseling, visit hackerlawgroup.com.
The best live theater can be found right here in the Santa Clarita Valley. The Canyon Theater Guild has been entertaining audiences for decades with top-quality musicals and plays. Located in Old Town Newhall, the CTG also offers workshops for the young actor in your family. For more information, call the box office at 799-2702 or go to canyontheater.org.
Visiting Angels is looking for quality caregivers and companions to join our growing team of compassionate, caring people providing care and assistance to Santa Clarita seniors. Our Angels help seniors with activities such as meal preparation, light housekeeping, personal care, and running errands. Visiting Angels takes pride in offering competitive wages, benefits, paid training, and flexible schedules. We have clients throughout Santa Clarita so you can work close to home. Details at visitingangels.com/Santa Clarita.
Visiting Angels, America's choice in home care. KHTS.
This is your place for news, talk, and information, your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. All right, welcome back to the show, the Total Financial Hour. I'm Arif Halaby with your special guest, Barak Lurie. We're talking about your family's finances a little bit. Of course, we're getting into his book, Atheism Kills. I know there's some questions on how does this relate? How do we bring this through to the financial world? Well, let's touch on a couple of things. Number one, take a look at the economies. In a short-term run, whenever you look at atheistic, communist-type societies, initially everything is wonderful. It looks great. A chicken in every pot. You remember that? FDR was very close to the philosophies of a lot of people. In fact, if you looked at Franklin Delano Roosevelt in the past, he was very much against Great Britain. He thought Great Britain had such expansionist powers that he was leaning more towards Stalin with the ideas and the philosophies and would often keep out Winston Churchill in certain discussions. You have the advantage of having me have a degree in history, so a little bit of topics. But why does that matter to financially? Because think of it like this. When you have a capitalistic society, you go around and you say you're going to do your best. The rules apply to everybody. But understand something. Rich people have always made the rules. In a capitalist society, communist society, Cleopatra on the Nile River, she made the rules to benefit herself and her friends. Fidel Castro made the rules to benefit himself and his friends. Stalin, Mao, the United States government. Rich people wrote the rules, except there's one little clause. It says the rules apply to everyone. Now, they don't have to tell you. Nobody had to tell you the rules. So you used to work real hard. You'd save up your money. You'd have a farm or a factory. And you'd send out one child, usually your boy. Heaven forbid you educate a girl. You'd take that boy, and you'd send that boy off to college. And society back then would sit around and they'd say, look, they told my mom, don't even get a high school diploma. You're going to just get married at 18 and have kids, unless you're going to be a nurse or a secretary. Thankfully, my mom bucked that system and said, no, thank you. We're going to do something different. And then you'd check your watch, and 3 or 4 years later, that oldest boy would return with knowledge, and you'd say, what did you find? Folks, today, knowledge comes to you. Today, you have one of these iPhone, iPads, Samsung, whatever, and knowledge is in your hand in seconds. So why aren't we all rich? Why aren't we all kings and queens? Why aren't we all powerful? It's simple. Because it's the proper use of the proper knowledge. And that, for financial, comes right back down to what is your philosophy?
Yeah, let me echo that. And by the way, where's your wisdom too, right? So,
that's right.
To your point, Arif, you have in the original founding fathers, every single one of them, not only did they believe in God, but they understood, and they said it quite clearly, that without God in the equation, this American experiment of democracy and republicanism will not work. They said it time and time again. Now, the reason why it's not overemphasized is because it was so obvious to them back then. It's like saying, this democracy will work so long as we have oxygen in the air, right?
That's right.
They didn't have to do that.
No.
But God was so obvious that, of course, you have to do that. So it was not a problem there. But to your point, the American democracy, and the reason why we're so different than the other worlds which are godless, is that they celebrate the state. Here in America, not only do we tolerate the individual, but we promote and celebrate the individual. We say, you have a great idea, go for it. And not only that, but we'll protect your rights to make a lot of money.
And up until just a short bit ago, we used to have the saying that said, I may not agree with what you say, but I will defend to the death the right for you to say it.
Right.
Today, they call it hate speech, and everybody sits there, you can't say that. What, are you crazy?
Right.
Where did that...
I love that.
I would have been laughed out of every single college class I ever took in my life if I ever said the word hate speech. The word doesn't exist.
It's interesting. There's a whole chapter in the book, Atheism Kills, about the demise of freedom, our notion of freedom. Freedom is not as important as it once was. And I'll tell you why. Because the more godless we become, the less relevant freedom is. So what do I mean by that?
Yeah, explain that.
Yeah. So I'm going to give you two different options, Arif. In scenario number one, you have a world where you're going to get free education, free healthcare, you're going to get free housing, you'll get a car, you get an allowance for goodies, libraries, even a little bit of stipends for traveling if you like. You'll have an 8-week work week and so forth. And parks will be available to you, all those good things. You're going to have all of that. Okay? The only condition, don't do anything contrary to the mission. Okay? Don't go contrary to our vision of utopia. Don't ask for more. Okay? Don't ask to be an individual, in other words. That's scenario one. Scenario number two says, we ain't giving you any of those things, but we're giving you the opportunity to do everything that you want, to run your own business, to pray as you want, to think as you want, to become the citizen and the promoter of things as you want. Most people won't, if they're given scenario one, they'll stay with scenario one. Because in the battle between freedom and freebies generally win. It's a very important thing to remember. Freedom is not relevant in a world without God.
You know how many times today you go down to the beach and you're going to see a guy who lives in a van, and I don't mean a homeless guy, but maybe a surfer, right? He finished his schooling, whatever he did, and decided to go up and down the coast and catch the best spots. And you take a look on a Wednesday morning and he's not at a job. He's surfing, he's hanging out. You take a look on a Friday afternoon and he's not on the freeway. He's hanging out and surfing. And you ask him, what is the most important thing? And he'll tell you, his freedom. Freedom to do what he wants. That's kind of the weird spirit. A friend of mine is Canadian, and he said, Arif, I don't understand what you Americans... of course, it's odd because when you think of a foreigner, non-American, he speaks English as fluent as I do. He looks like us. There's no real change. And so when he speaks, it's odd to me to hear this because he says, you Americans, what is it with your guns and your freedom?
And your God, for that matter, yeah.
He said, why is that such a big deal to you guys? I don't understand.
It
was odd to me to see that.
Yeah, they were very flummoxed about the whole freedom business. They don't care about freedom.
No.
And I think a lot of Americans don't care about freedom.
Beginning to seem that way.
Yeah, well, I mean, look at Obama. He rarely used the word freedom or liberty in any of his speeches. Rarely, not zero, but really rarely. It's Reagan who said it. It's Lincoln who said it. And it's Washington who said it. So it begs the question.
John F. Kennedy said it in almost every speech.
But it begs the question, what freedom are you talking about? Right? To use the, what you're talking about, Willis, sort of colloquialism. What freedom are we talking about? The freedom to do what? Right? Again, a chapter in my book, and it's one of my favorite chapters. Is it the freedom to, I don't know, to have sex as much as you want? Is it the freedom to listen to whatever music you want to? Is it the freedom to read whatever book you want to? Is it freedom to petition your government? There's something to that, right? But are you willing to die for it? You know, if somebody told me I can't listen to my favorite bands, let's say the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, or Wilco, and you'll die if you do listen to it. I'll say, you know what? I'm cool with not listening to the Beatles
that's
anymore.
fine.
I can replay it in my head. Not so important. And then what about what you read and even what you petition for speed bumps on my neighborhood, for example? Am I willing to die for that? No. What am I willing to die for? The freedom to find God. That's what everyone was talking about.
So I want to bring this around to the financial side of things, because I think a big part of what we talk about when we're dealing with the freedom, it's the freedom for you to start your own business. Mm-hmm. It's incredible to me. I have friends that own, many friends that own businesses, and they can't seem to find people to work for them. Arif, I put an ad out, I get 6 people, one of them is okay. The second word out of his mouth is, when my vacation days start.
That's so true.
And I'm like,
yes.
Or right. A gentleman that I interviewed, and he said, Arif, I'm willing to start with you. I don't even know where the bathroom is or how to use a stapler yet, but I get it. I'm willing to start with you for $70,000 a year.
Yeah.
I said, well, what exactly do we do? And he came up with some general ideas, but he still didn't. I said, I'm not going to teach you for the next 6 months and pay you $35,000, half of 70, but the freedom to start his own business. So I ended up mentoring him for a little while. And can I tell you that man is worth tens of millions of dollars today?
Wow.
That was 12 years ago.
Right.
And he's probably 34 now, 36. Yeah. And he's very wealthy, as an international business, very successful. And it's because nobody ever talked to him and told him, you're not worth $70,000 a year just because you have an MBA. It's nice, but you can't even spell what we do. So there's this freedom that gets taken from you when you don't have an opportunity to succeed. The more guarantees you have, the less opportunity. Who was it that said, the larger the government, the smaller the citizen?
I believe it was Dennis Prager.
I think it was,
right.
Yes.
Well, it's about responsibility. This man that you tutored, or that you mentored, he discovered the joy of responsibility and accountability. And with that comes great reward and also responsibility. I mean, that's the end of it. And Europeans don't like that. They don't want to be responsible. The government is supposed to handle all that. To the point, and this does apply to the way we run our businesses. Arif, do you remember how there was a train terrorist attack about 3 or 4 years ago, and this terrorist guy was in a French train, right? He's around Paris, and he shouted "Allahu Akbar" and all those things, and none of the European men got up to fight him.
Wow.
What did happen? 3 people did.
Oh, that's right.
And they were all Americans.
That's right.
All devout Christians, by the way.
That's right.
And they did not hesitate. They jumped on this guy. They took some wounds, but that was it. And the rest of them were like, they might as well have been mannequins in the passenger seats.
Wow.
And because they had the sense of, the government is going to take care of this. Oh, here's a crazy man. He's threatened to kill us all. Surely somebody from the government will take care of this.
Sure.
Whereas these 3 men said, no, I'm responsible. I've got to deal with this.
Look, in the book Atheism Kills by Barack Lurie, folks, why do I want you to read it? I want you to read it for 2 reasons. One, because Barack is a very well-educated man. He's an attorney and educated at Stanford, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
That's okay. Other than that, we still like you.
Wait a minute. I feel a Cal alum here. The presence.
Yes.
The dark side.
USC, but other than that.
That's great. USC is great.
Yeah,
what are you
it's
talking
cool.
about?
And part of behind the scenes, though, is to think about, you need to develop an opportunity for you to succeed. This is the time. The government is getting out of the way with regulation because we don't have this view with this new administration. Look, unless I am president and I write the Constitution, and I write the tax law, and I write the Bible, I'm not going to agree with anything 100% of the time. I'm married to my wife, and I don't agree with her 100%. So if you think you're supposed to agree with the president 100%, or this tax bill, or what you're supposed to, right? You have to understand, my thought process as an individual is to conform, to get rid of some of the weaknesses that I have, and to conform in my world. And you can follow whatever you want, but if it's not in the Bible or the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, then that's the standard. Will we make mistakes? Every day. Of course. But come back to whatever guiding factor you think you can come up with, right? What is that center line? And atheists don't seem to have it.
It's so funny you say that, and you're right. An atheist, interesting, on the financial scene, they're very rarely successful.
I've seen that.
Isn't it
You're
funny?
so right.
And those with God, especially my devout Jewish friends and devout Christians, they somehow make it. They find great ways to accomplish things. Why? Because they understand that it's part of a mission. They understand that they want to do things for the glory of God, right? And so when a mistake happens or they fail in a business, they learn from it. They want to learn from it. Whereas the atheist says, well, that life sucks and somebody owes me something.
Yes.
And the government should give me the welfare check or the unemployment check, as the case may be. And there's very little sense of responsibility. Somebody else owes them the money. They want the money right now.
Let me tell you, we have family that my dad came from Lebanon in the 50s, went over to Africa. He was in Africa for over 10, almost 12 years. Then he came to the United States. Consequently, he had lots of friends and other people that went with him. And so we had family members. So we have family that are born and raised in Africa, that are African, that are black Americans, well, black Africans. There are more African Americans that have come to the United States,
right,
post
slavery
abolition, than before. And in fact, if you take the last 100 years, there are more people. I'm not saying we still have problems, but my family or distant family, they're cousins basically, that have come here, don't understand what
all the fuss is about.
Yeah, what the average black American is worried about. They said, of course people aren't going to like you because you're black. They didn't like you over there because you were from a different tribe and you were still black. They didn't like you over here because...
and yet they still come here.
And they come here and they thrive.
And understandably so. I mean,
they're nurses, they're engineers, they're doctors. Some of them work for the county. And they get it. They see, oh, yeah, that guy's a jerk to me at the coffee shop. Well, you know what? Screw him. I won't go back to the coffee shop. I mean,
that's right.
What do you do? But the freedom part of success, and each and every one of those people that came here because they couldn't follow God there.
Right.
Fascinating that people leave from one place to another for the sake of God.
Right. It's great. And really, for your listeners who are looking for financial advice, a very big picture. I mean, when people ask me, how do you raise great children? I say, make sure first and foremost that you have a God-centered family. Do that first, and then other things will flow from there. There's a couple of other things I add, but the very first thing I say, make a God-centered family. Likewise, if you want to succeed in life financially, do what Arif says. He's very good. I mean, I've listened to his great wisdom financially. But the very first step is make sure to embrace God, understand that God is real, God is everywhere, God is in charge. And when you adopt that approach, you also adopt the approach of responsibility. You will see clearer. You will understand the opportunities out there better than you could without God.
If you have a God-centered life, you tend to take responsibility and feel that there's this overwhelming responsibility for other mankind, for other men, other women, for mankind as a general, not the government. Right. I don't feel like I have a responsibility to make sure that we can pass one more regulation or one more bill in Congress. I feel like I have a responsibility to the men and women in my church or in my neighborhood or my family. Even with the success that we have, you still have a responsibility to other people.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem to exist in certain communities, except when you speak of God, are you speaking of a Judeo-Christian God?
Yes.
Now tell me why a God from Islam, and listen, folks, if you have 15 minutes, you can learn enough about the Shia and the Sunni and all the different Islamic factions, right? So it's not just one group. They don't like each other. They're blowing each other up. shooting each other's mosques up, etc. So it isn't just one group. We're not going to paint them with the picture with the same brush. But you have to understand, there is something that I admire. I have a lot of Muslim friends that I admire, and that is that they have a thing that they do where they have their own welfare system, similar to the Mormon Church, where they kind of take care of themselves. If somebody's a widow or somebody passes away and they need to take care of the children, they have something that they do that I can't remember the name of it, but
yeah, and I forget the name also, and I'm aware of it. There's a difference though, and there are uncomfortable facts in this world, and one of them is that the Judeo-Christian culture has progressed beautifully. It is because of the Judeo-Christian culture that we have the university system, that we have the school system that we think of today, that we have hospitals as we think of them today. We have charity systems in a great flourishing sense as we think of them today. We have the notion of freedom itself as we think of it today and have always thought of it. We have the scientific method that was created by the Catholic Church. Thank you very much. I'm not Catholic, but I love those guys. I love Christians because they've developed so much goodness. They discovered Gregory Mendel with the whole hereditary sort of system.
Well, you have algebra, mathematics, created by...
Well, no, that's not quite correct.
All right.
Okay, so a lot of it is, I can get to that in a moment, but you had the Big Bang discovered by a Catholic priest. I have a whole section of this in the book about all the incredible things that were created by Christians. In the Muslim world, very sadly, you see very few Muslims who have won Nobel Prizes, for example. You see a lot of Christians, you see a lot of Jews, wildly disproportionate from their numbers in the world. But Muslims, very few. And in terms of progress, there are very few things you can say, well, look, these guys, they're responsible for that. There is it is true that there is some connection to algebra and what we call the Arabic numerals. That doesn't mean that Islam created it. You understand, right? I mean, there are many people who are very good Muslims, and they are good Muslims, but good people, I should say, not necessarily because of their Islam, but sometimes in spite of it.
So what do you say to folks that say, look, in the Quran, you look at the later versions or the earlier versions of Muhammad and his way of creating charity, his way of giving back, his way of, which one do you follow? Because folks, there's earlier in life, there's kind of one set of rules. Later in life, there's a different set of rules.
Well, look, we have a history of Islam, and unfortunately, it's a very bad history. There's a lot of murder. There's a lot of raping. There's a horrific treatment of women, horrific treatment of anyone who does not convert to Islam, horrific treatment to say nothing of minorities and gays and everything else. It is not a liberal concept.
Well, so let's look at some of the numbers. I have some stats here to take a look at. Nearly 1/5 of Muslim respondents in a poll here from CARE, or regarding CARE, said that the use of violence in the United States is justified in order to make Sharia law the law of the land of this country. Now, what is Sharia law? Maybe you can explain.
Well, Sharia law is a system that's promoted in Islam, whereby everybody will live under the religious ideology and religious law, so that you have the equivalent of Sharia police, for example. They go around seeing whether or not a woman's skirt is too short, or if a man has shaved his beard, which is inappropriate under Sharia law. It's extreme religion, and it's enforced as law.
When we go back to the Jewish law, where the Sadducees and the Pharisees, and they had rules and regulations, and walk on this side of the street and wash your hands this way.
Well, first of all, a lot of that was because of with an idea of keeping God in mind and such. But you weren't going to be condemned. You wouldn't be stoned for any of those things. Sadly, in at least radical Islam today, and I'm not speaking about moderate Islam, I'm speaking about radical Islam, which unfortunately is getting too much of a foothold in world societies. You will die if you are a woman, for example, that goes out and without a male escort.
So why are people too afraid to talk about this? Every time it gets brought up, immediately they tar you with the Islamophobic and all whatever else they're.
Well, I think that's an easy answer. There are many Muslims out there, and they have a very loud voice. They have a big microphone, so to speak, in front of them. there are, 1.7 billion Muslims on the planet. You just pointed to a statistics which shows that a huge number of them are at least tolerant of the idea of using violence to impose Sharia law.
Right here in the United States.
Right here in the United States, yeah, exactly. And this is where the numbers are even lower. So it's much higher outside of the United States. It's a terrifying statistic. People don't have the strength, the courage to fight back. And this is one of the points of atheism kills, Arif. You have a world where people are afraid. You cannot possibly fight back fascism, communism, or radical Islam unless you have God as a front and center concept in your culture.
Well, the foothold that all of these communities seem to have in common is they create these mini ghettos. I don't know the right word, but not in the derogatory term, but a mini ghetto, mini
enclaves,
group, enclave. Mm-hmm. And they have these no-go zones. Yeah. I didn't think it was true, but I have friends in law enforcement that said, Arif, it's absolutely true. Yeah. In places in Michigan, in places in Wisconsin, where you can't go if you are not, if you're law enforcement.
Right.
You have to ask permission.
Yeah, those no-go zones are even more prevalent all over Europe, especially in France. It's terrifying, and that can't be what we tolerate, and it's going to get more and more like that unless something changes.
Well, it's a little bit scary, folks. We're going to continue with Atheism Kills author Barak Lurie. The author of Atheism Kills is also a host of his own radio show on Sundays at
10 a.m.
10 a.m., 10 to 11. At AM 870. You can tune into his show as well. We're going to continue and wrap it up here in just a minute with Barak Lurie. You're listening to me, Arif Halaby, on the special edition of the Total Financial Hour on KHTS. We're right back.
The Santa Clarita Artists Association has a new gallery in downtown Newhall on 6th Street between Main and Railroad, right across from the Canyon Theater Guild. The gallery features our members' paintings, sculptures, and one-of-a-kind handcrafted gift items. Whether you're an art lover, buyer, or an artist wishing to join, visit our website at santaclaritaartist.org, come to our free monthly meetings at Barnes & Noble, or stop by the gallery. For upcoming events and exhibits, check us out at santaclaritaartist.org. We make visual art visible.
With Facey Medical Group, good health is within your reach. Our doctors provide Santa Clarita's finest primary and specialist care at 4 convenient Santa Clarita locations. If you're looking for connected, convenient, personal care, there's no better place. We accept most health insurance, including plans offered through Covered California. Call 1-844-MY-FACEY for more information or to schedule an appointment.
Tucked away in Canyon Country is an upscale, intimate, unforgettable dining experience. Taste the wonders of Italy at Piccola Trattoria. This gem of a restaurant is our valley's best-kept secret, but not for long. The secret will be out once you've tasted their homemade pastas, pizzas, ossobuco, or their scrumptious sausage, fresh seafood, or steaks. Better save room for dessert. Your table will be fighting over who gets the final bite of their heavenly tiramisu. Piccola Trattoria, off Sierra Highway on Dolan Way. Your unforgettable dining experience.
Six Flags lights up into a spectacular winter wonderland. Don't miss Holiday in the Park with over 1 million lights and new holiday festivities, plus thrilling rides like Santa's Wild Sleigh Ride VR Coaster. Time is running out to get free admission with a season pass. Buy 4, get a free upgrade to Gold with free season parking and Hurricane Harbor. For the best deal, buy a membership, less than $8 each per month. Must buy and visit by December 31st.
Your hometown station, KHTS.
Thanks for listening to your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. Hey, welcome back to the show, The Total Financial Hour, as we finish up this hour of the program. I'm Arif Halaby, here with special guest Barak Lurie from Atheism Kills. Folks, we're talking about a new book that's coming out. Forward is by Dennis Prager. Some of you might know who he is, a renowned speaker. I'm going to hold it up here for some of you on Facebook. A great book to read, and here's the reason. Because I think you need to understand the foundation of the United States. Barak, we hear time and again this argument. We are not a Christian country. We were not founded on Christian principles. What do you say to that?
Well, that's garbage. It just denies all history. We are truly a Christian nation. And I say this as a Jew. I'm very happy that this country is and was a Christian nation and founded as such. That is the reason why we are so successful as a nation. It has fostered freedom. It has a sense that it has turned us in a way where we believe in God. We're all centered around God. And that's the way it always has been. By the way, there's an expression, revolutions eat their young. Have you heard that? The notion is that, every revolution that you can think of has been usurped by somebody else, right? Like the Bolsheviks, for example. They usurped the Alex Kerensky revolution. And the French Revolution is another good example of that, right? I mean, it eventually gets usurped by somebody else who takes advantage and exploits the situation. Exception, the American Revolution. We are still living in the revolution that the Founding Fathers advanced, Alexander Hamilton fought for, and the George Washington, and so forth. The reason is because it was God-centered. And that God-centering is directly from the Christian faith. Don't buy this argument from anybody that tells you that Christianity was not front and center of the American Revolution. It was.
The Judeo-Christian values come from a variety of ideas and thoughts that are derived specifically from the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament. I can always tell somebody who is not really grounded or even has any understanding, because they'll say, there's different religions like Baptist and Methodist. And you say,
which one's right?
Yeah, they are
Right.
They are just factions, like, if you will. Baptists believe in certain parts of Christianity, but the same tenets belong all the way across the board. If you believe in those tenets, then they consider yourself a Christian. If you don't, then they don't.
You and I believe in the same God, right? It's the Judeo-Christian God. But when people say this, I say that's like saying that, you have a difference in baptism, as a Southern Baptist, and evangelical versus the Anglican Church or Catholic Church. I say that's like saying that French is superior to German, or that Chinese is superior to Japanese. No, they're just different languages to God. That's all, right? I mean, I speak God with a Jewish accent, right? You speak God with a Christian accent. What's wrong with that? The important part is that we understand, and the amazing thing about it is that we understand the one thing in common is that God is in charge.
If you take a look historically at the difference between common law and, if you will, the law that the French have, which is a specific type of law, remind me, if you will.
The Napoleonic
law. I knew that answer. But in the United States, Louisiana is the only place that we still have Napoleonic law that kind of thrives.
Right.
And yet, if you listen to our show last Sunday on the other station, what we did is we talked about the depth of corruption that is sitting in Louisiana. Because they weren't founded on this, in my opinion, on a foundation that comes in the same as the British law. Here's a good example. When you're driving down the street and you see somebody that needs help, what immediately is your thought? Is it the government ought to help them, or somebody ought to help them?
Right.
Maybe not you. Maybe you're going to work. Maybe you're broke. Maybe that's just not your thing. Maybe you're afraid of them. But who are you thinking that's going to help them? And the more that you have this mindset that the government is designed to do everything for you, then the only way to become successful or rich is to take from the government.
Right.
It's the circle that never can end.
It's one of the many dangerous aspects of atheism. Truly, it's a really great point. Look, I see that we're having a little bit of time, but this book, we talk about how atheism, because I know that a lot of naysayers, atheism has killed far more prolifically than anything else in history.
Rough numbers. Give me some numbers.
We're talking about 200 million in the 20th century alone. Okay, and that's before we get to the abortion statistics, which was created by atheistic ideologies as well. And not only does it destroy by the millions killing, but it also destroys us individually from within. It kills our sense of creativity, our sense of purpose, our sense of time.
And your sense of hope.
Sense of hope, exactly right. There's no point to having children in a world without God.
Take a look at the birth rates, folks, in atheistic countries. Hey, thanks for joining us. You can go to tfswealth.com. You can give us a call at 888-99-RETIRE. 888-99-RETIRE. That's directly to us. Thanks for joining us.